Zara Vex stepped off the transport shuttle with nothing but a duffel bag, a scholarship letter, and the kind of optimism that only comes from being completely ignorant of your own reputation. The Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences sprawled before her like a chrome and crystal fever dream, all impossible angles and floating platforms that definitely violated several laws of physics she was pretty sure still applied. "Welcome to Kepler 442 billion, she muttered, squinting at the three suns hanging in the purple sky, where apparently gravity is just a suggestion and architecture majored in showing off. She'd barely made it to the main entrance when every alarm on the campus decided to throw a simultaneous tantrum. Red lights strobed, klaxons wailed, and a voice that sounded like it had been designed by a committee of very paranoid engineers boomed from every speaker. "Alert. Classified entity detected. Threat level, maximum. Initiating lockdown protocol 7 Alpha. Zara looked around, wondering what kind of monster had arrived with her. The shuttle port was empty except for a few maintenance bots that were now fleeing like their circuits were on fire. "Hello," she called out to no one in particular. "I think there's been some kind of mistake." "Negative, no mistake detected. Human designation, Zara Vex. Psychological profile, dangerously adaptive. Survival instinct, unreasonably high. Weapon improvisation capacity, yes." "Weapon improvisation capacity, yes? What does that even mean?" The AI, apparently named Guardian according to the helpful holographic display that materialized, seemed to consider this for a moment. "It means you are human." Well, that was hard to argue with. A security team of six-legged, crystal-shelled beings that looked like someone had crossbred a crab with a disco ball approached cautiously. Their leader, wearing what Zara assumed were the alien equivalent of riot gear, spoke through a translator that made him sound like a nervous chipmunk. "Please remain stationary, human Zara Vex. Do not make any sudden movements, creative adaptations, or solutions." "Solutions? Why would I not make solutions?" The security team exchanged what she assumed were worried glances, though it was hard to tell with their compound eyes. "Because," the leader squeaked, "last time a human made a solution at an academic institution, they accidentally created a new branch of mathematics and 3 students achieved enlightenment." Zara blinked. "That sounds like a good thing?" "They were only trying to fix a broken coffee machine." Eventually, after what felt like 17 different background checks and a psychological evaluation that consisted mainly of asking if she had any plans to revolutionize their understanding of the universe, Zara was escorted to her dormitory by a being who introduced himself as Glub. Glub was, for lack of a better description, what might happen if a slug decided to pursue higher education. He was roughly humanoid, covered in a shimmering purple mucus that he assured her was purely decorative, and possessed the kind of nervous energy typically reserved for small animals that have just spotted a predator. "So," Zara said as they walked through corridors that kept rearranging themselves, "that was quite a welcome committee." Glub's eye stalks drooped. "Oh, that was nothing. You should see what happens when they think you're actually dangerous." "They don't think I'm dangerous?" Well, Glub paused at their door, which was marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "They think you're human, which is, you know." He made a gesture that somehow conveyed the concept of apocalyptically terrifying using only his mucus tentacles. "Which is what?" "Oh, you don't know." Glub's eye stalks perked up with the kind of excitement that comes from having gossip to share. "Humans are famous. Across 17 different spiral arms. You're the species that refuses to die when you should, turns anything into a weapon, and somehow befriends black holes." "We don't befriend black holes." The Andromedan Archive would disagree. Something about Hawking and his radiation buddies. Zara decided not to unpack that particular misunderstanding. The next morning, Zara discovered that interstellar higher education came with all the same bureaucratic nightmares as the terrestrial version, but with the added bonus of forms that existed in 17 dimensions and required signatures from body parts she didn't possess. Professor Kettar's office looked like someone had shaken a kaleidoscope until it gave up and decided to be furniture instead. The professor himself was an impressive sight, 6 arms, each ending in delicate manipulator claws, compound eyes that tracked movement independently, and an expression that suggested he had drawn the shortest possible straw in the great lottery of academic assignments. "Miss Vex," he said, his voice translator giving him the tone of a particularly weary librarian, "I have been assigned as your academic advisor by what I can only assume was a clerical error, or possibly divine punishment." "Nice to meet you too, Professor." Ket-Tar shuffled through papers with 4 of his arms while the remaining 2 appeared to be stress-grooming his antennae. "Let us proceed with course selection. What field of study interests you?" "Engineering, with a focus on sustainable energy systems." Every one of his arms stopped moving simultaneously. "Engineering." "Yes." "You want to study engineering?" "That's generally why people major in it, yeah." Professor Ket-Tar made it sound like a deflating balloon having an existential crisis. "The system has flagged engineering coursework as unsuitable for human psychology and likely to result in revolutionary breakthroughs that invalidate current understanding of thermodynamics." That seems oddly specific. The last human engineering student accidentally solved 3 different energy crises while trying to build a better pencil sharpener. "Okay, what about basic physics?" More frantic paper shuffling. "Physics is marked as requires additional safety protocols. Apparently, humans have a tendency to question fundamental constants as if they were merely strong suggestions." "They kind of are, though." Professor Ket-Tar's antennae wilted visibly. They spent the next hour working through a course catalog that seemed designed to prevent Zara from learning anything that might accidentally improve the universe. Chemistry was out due to excessive creativity with molecular structures. Mathematics was flagged for tendency to discover proofs that make established mathematicians question their life choices. Even art history was marked as potentially dangerous. Apparently because the last human art student had written a paper that somehow proved that abstract expressionism was actually a form of primitive quantum mechanics, leading to 3 different species redesigning their entire aesthetic philosophies. "What about something safe?" Zara suggested. "Like basket weaving?" Ket-Tar checked the system. Basket weaving is listed as potentially weaponizable in human hands. "How do you weaponize basket weaving?" "I have learned not to ask such questions. They lead to answers that keep me awake during my rest cycles." Eventually, they settled on a course load that included introductory galactic history, pre-approved events already occurred, cannot be changed by human intervention, basic xenobiology, acceptable, subject species already extinct, and comparative philosophy, low risk, mostly theoretical. As Zara left the office, she passed a group of students clustered around a maintenance panel that was sparking ominously. They were all staring at it with the kind of hopeless expression typically reserved for tax audits and relationship discussions. "What seems to be the problem?" Zara asked, purely out of curiosity. The group, which appeared to consist of 3 different species of varying degrees of crystalline, immediately backed away as if she had announced her intention to start juggling antimatter. "The atmospheric recycling unit is malfunctioning," one of them managed. "We have contacted maintenance, but they estimate a repair time of 6 standard cycles." 6 cycles? That's ridiculous. Zara knelt down and peered at the panel. The problem was obvious, a loose connection and what looked like a blown fuse. "Hand me that multi-tool." "We cannot allow you to." "It's just a loose wire." "Look, the power coupling is barely hanging on, and this component here is clearly fried. 5-minute fix, tops." She had the panel open and was making the repair before anyone could stop her. It really was a simple fix. Reconnect the coupling, bypass the blown component temporarily, and reroute power through the secondary system. Basic maintenance. The kind of thing any first-year engineering student could handle. The atmospheric system hummed back to life, and suddenly everyone could breathe properly again. When Zara looked up, she found herself surrounded by what appeared to be an impromptu worship circle. "She fixed it," one of them whispered. With her hands added another. "And tools," the third contributed helpfully. "I mean, it wasn't exactly rocket science," Zara said. which caused all three to exchange glances that somehow conveyed the sentiment that yes, it probably was rocket science, and she had just treated it like changing a light bulb. Word spread quickly after that. Zara's first actual class was Introductory Physics Laboratory, which sounded harmless enough until she realized that introductory in galactic terms apparently meant potentially reality-threatening but in a manageable way. The lab was a cathedral of science, all gleaming surfaces and equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. Her lab partners were Vex, a gelatinous being who communicated through color changes and smelled like vanilla, and Thorak, a rock-like creature whose species had apparently evolved from living mountains and had the personality to match. Today, announced Dr. Hexlar, a being that looked like someone had crossed an octopus with a filing cabinet, we will be conducting a simple quantum resonance experiment. The goal is to create a stable micro-wormhole using controlled gravitational fluctuations. Zara raised her hand. Isn't creating wormholes inherently dangerous? The entire lab went quiet. Dr. Hexlar's tentacles twitched in what she assumed was amusement. Miss Vex, this is a perfectly safe, routine exercise that has been conducted by students for over 400 galactic standard years. The micro-wormhole will exist for exactly 0.003 seconds and span a distance of precisely 1 millimeter. Right, but what happens if? Nothing will happen, Miss Vex. The safety protocols are foolproof. In Zara's experience, any system described as foolproof was usually in the process of being defeated by a particularly clever fool. But she kept that observation to herself. The experiment setup was elegant in its complexity. A containment field generator, a quantum resonance chamber about the size of a shoebox, and enough monitoring equipment to track a butterfly's emotional state. Everything was connected by cables that glowed with their own inner light and made sounds like very small, very angry bees. Now, Dr. Hexlar continued, we simply initiate the resonance sequence, monitor the gravitational fluctuations, and observe the formation of the micro-wormhole. Vix, please begin the initialization sequence. Vix turned a confident shade of blue and began manipulating the controls. The quantum resonance chamber started to hum, and the monitoring equipment began displaying readouts that looked like the universe was running diagnostics on itself. Everything was proceeding normally until it wasn't. The first sign of trouble was when the containment field began fluctuating in a way that the equipment clearly hadn't expected. Warning lights started blinking, and the previously confident hum of the quantum chamber took on the desperate tone of a machine trying to hold reality together with determination and wishful thinking. That's unusual, Dr. Hexlar muttered, his tentacles dancing across emergency controls. The resonance frequency appears to be increasing exponentially. Vix had turned a color that Zara was pretty sure meant panic in any language. The warnings escalated from polite blinks to urgent strobing, and the quantum chamber began making a sound like the universe clearing its throat. Evacuation protocol initiated, Guardian announced helpfully. All personnel please proceed to designated safety zones in an orderly fashion. The lab erupted into the kind of organized chaos that came from well-practiced emergency procedures. Students filed out quickly but calmly. Dr. Hexlar was frantically consulting a manual the size of a small phone book, and Thorak was standing perfectly still, apparently hoping that not moving would make the problem go away. Zara, however, was looking at the readouts and seeing a pattern that made her engineering brain start twitching. Hey, Dr. Hexlar, she called over the increasingly urgent alarms. What happens if the resonance frequency hits the chamber's natural harmonic? It won't, he replied, but he sounded less certain than before. The safety protocols prevent. The frequency readings spiked, and the quantum chamber began vibrating like an extremely pissed-off tuning fork. Right, said Zara. It's going to hit harmonic resonance in about 30 seconds, at which point we'll have a quantum cascade failure instead of a micro-wormhole. That's impossible. Dr. Hexlar, I'm going to need you to stop telling me it's impossible and start helping me rig up a frequency dampener. Because otherwise we're about to accidentally prove that this lab exists in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. While the good doctor was still processing this information, Zara was already moving. The quantum chamber needed a counter-frequency to disrupt the harmonic buildup, and the lab was conveniently full of equipment that could generate precisely that. She grabbed Vix's communication device, which operated on quantum entanglement, yanked the power coupling from Thorax's species-specific life support system. He'd be fine for a few minutes, and cannibalized the field generator from the next lab bench over. "Miss Vex, what are you doing?" Dr. Hexlar shouted over the alarms. "Improvising." Zara shouted back, connecting the devices with her shoelaces because sometimes the universe demanded that you work with what you had. "Vix, I need you to modulate your natural bioluminescence to match the frequency I'm about to generate." Vix flickered between confused purple and terrified orange. "Just trust me." The makeshift frequency dampener came online just as the quantum chamber hit critical resonance. For a moment, the lab filled with a sound like reality hiccuping, and then silence. The micro-wormhole appeared exactly as intended, existed for precisely 0.003 seconds, spanned exactly 1 millimeter, and then collapsed into nothingness, as if it had never been there at all. While Dr. Hexlar said after a very long moment, "That was educational." Zara began untying her shoelaces from the improvised equipment. "Sorry about the safety protocols. I'll try to follow them better next time." "Miss Vex," Dr. Hexlar said slowly, "you just prevented a quantum cascade failure using laboratory equipment and footwear." And Vix's color-changing thing. "That was crucial." Vix turned a modest shade of pink. "Right," the doctor continued, "and that. The point is, you just solved a potentially catastrophic problem using materials that shouldn't work together, according to several fundamental laws of physics. I mean, fundamental laws are more like guidelines when you're dealing with quantum mechanics." That was when Guardian's voice filled the lab. "Attention, human Zara Vex has demonstrated exceptional competency in crisis management. Updating security protocols. Designation changed from potential threat to owner." "Owner?" Zara asked. "Congratulations," Dr. Hexlar said weakly. "You've just been promoted to campus security chief by an AI that controls everything from door locks to the cafeteria menu." "Do I get a badge?" The cultural sensitivity seminar was held in a room that had clearly been designed by someone who believed that comfort was the enemy of learning. The chairs were geometrically challenging. The lighting came from crystals that hummed at frequencies that made Zara's teeth itch, and the air smelled like someone had been conducting chemistry experiments with lavender and despair. Dr. Vex Halley, the seminar leader, was a tall, elegant being who looked like what might happen if a praying mantis decided to pursue a career in academia. Her species apparently communicated through a combination of hand gestures, color changes, and interpretive dance, which the universal translator handled by making her sound like a very educated ballet instructor. "Welcome, students, to Cultural Sensitivity and Interspecies Understanding," Dr. Vex Halley announced, executing what appeared to be a ceremonial twirl. "Today's topic is dangerous species in you, recognition, avoidance, and diplomatic protocols." The assembled students, representing at least 12 different species, settled into their uncomfortable chairs with the resigned air of beings attending a mandatory corporate training session. "Now," Dr. Vex Halley continued, "when we speak of dangerous species, we must consider various categories. There are the physically dangerous, such as the void hunters of the Magellanic Clouds. There are the psychically dangerous, like the dream weavers of Tau Ceti. And then, she paused and looked directly at Zara. There are the humans." Every student in the room turned to stare at Zara, who suddenly felt like she had accidentally wandered into a nature documentary about apex predators. "Humans," Dr. Vex Halley said with the tone typically reserved for discussing natural disasters, represent a unique category of threat. They are not the strongest species, nor the smartest nor the most technologically advanced. What makes them dangerous is their psychological profile. "Excuse me," Zara interrupted, "but I feel like this is getting a little personal." "Miss Vex, you are here precisely because this is personal. You see, humans have 3 characteristics that, when combined, Create a species that the Galactic Safety Council has classified as unpredictably resourceful to a concerning degree. Dr. Vex Halley began pacing, which involved a complex series of steps that somehow defied gravity. First, humans possess what our xenopsychologists have termed inappropriate survival instincts. When faced with a situation that should logically result in death, humans do not accept this outcome. Instead, they become creative. That sounds like a good thing, Zara said. The human vessel Endurance was trapped in ice for 634 standard days. The crew not only survived but actually became healthier during their ordeal and later described it as character building. Several students made sounds that suggested their universal translators were struggling with the concept. Second, Dr. Vex Halley continued, humans demonstrate weaponization syndrome. This is the tendency to look at any object, situation, or concept and immediately assess its potential for use in conflict. We don't do that, Zara protested. Miss Vex, when you entered this room, how long did it take you to identify potential weapons and escape routes? Zara considered this. The crystal lights could be shattered for cutting implements. The uncomfortable chairs could be used as shields or projectiles. The ventilation grate in the corner was large enough to crawl through. And the potted plant by the door was heavy enough to serve as a club and probably contained soil that could be thrown to blind an attacker. That doesn't mean anything, she said. That's just situational awareness. The average non-human requires 17 minutes to perform the same assessment. You did it in under 3 seconds. The other students were now actively scooting their chairs away from her. Third, and most concerning, humans exhibit friendship paradox behavior. They have an inexplicable tendency to befriend the most dangerous entities they encounter. Again, that sounds positive. The human Steve Irwin achieved legendary status by actively seeking out creatures that were trying to kill him. Apparently for recreational purposes. Human children keep as pets the same creatures that other species classify as efficient killing machines. There are documented cases of humans befriending black holes, sentient diseases, and at least one eldritch horror that achieved enlightenment after experiencing human kindness. Dr. Vex Halley executed what appeared to be a gesture of profound respect mixed with existential dread. The result of these 3 traits is a species that treats what other civilizations consider apocalyptic survival scenarios as Tuesday. You do not simply overcome adversity, you improve it, weaponize it, and then invite it over for dinner. Okay, but... The conversation was interrupted by Guardian's voice echoing through the campus. Attention all personnel. Unscheduled visit by armed vessels detected. Initiating defense protocols. Please proceed to designated safety areas in an orderly fashion. Through the room's transparent walls, Zara could see ships descending from orbit. They looked like someone had crossed a shark with a disco ball and given it serious anger management issues. Space pirates, Dr. Vex Halley announced with remarkable calm. A relatively minor threat. Standard protocols call for hiding until they take whatever they want and leave. The other students began filing toward the exits with the practiced efficiency of beings who had clearly done this before. Zara remained seated mostly because she was still processing the idea that space piracy was considered routine enough to have standard protocols. That was when she noticed something interesting. Every single student had moved to position themselves between her and the exits, not to block her escape, but to ensure that she was between them and any potential threats. Guys, she called out. Shouldn't we be evacuating together? Miss Vex, Dr. Vex Halley said gently, they are not protecting themselves from the pirates. They are positioning themselves to be protected by you. That's ridiculous. I'm just a student. You are, Dr. Vex Halley agreed. A human student, which means that in approximately 10 minutes, those pirates are going to deeply regret their life choices. Through the walls, Zara could see the pirate ships landing in the campus courtyard, and she had to admit that they looked pretty intimidating. She was also starting to get annoyed. It was lunchtime, and she had been really looking forward to trying the cafeteria's mystery protein today. Well, she said, standing up and cracking her knuckles, I guess we should go introduce ourselves. The collective intake of breath from the other students sounded like a small hurricane. Zara's first thought upon seeing the space pirates up close was that they had clearly graduated from the same design school as their ships. They were large, crystalline, and bristled with enough weapons to supply a small military. Their leader, who was roughly the size and shape of an angry rhinoceros made of black diamond, was currently bellowing demands through a translator that made him sound like a particularly aggressive opera singer. Citizens of this educational establishment, we are the Void Reapers of the Outer Rim. Surrender your valuable resources and prepare for systematic plundering. The campus had efficiently emptied except for maintenance staff, who were hiding behind various pieces of landscaping, and Zara, who was standing in the middle of the courtyard with her hands on her hips, looking mildly irritated. "Excuse me," she called out, "but you're interrupting lunch." The pirate leader's attention focused on her with the intensity of a weapons targeting system. Small organic creature. You will submit to plundering or face the consequences of resistance. Right, here's the thing, Zara said, walking closer to the assembled pirates with the casual confidence of someone who had clearly missed the part of the briefing about mortal danger. It's Tuesday, I haven't eaten since breakfast, and you're standing between me and what might possibly be actual food. So I'm going to need you to wrap this up quickly. The pirates exchanged what she assumed were confused glances, though it was hard to tell with their crystal-faceted faces. Did this creature just make demands of us? One of them asked their leader. I believe it did, the leader replied, sounding genuinely baffled. Behind her, Zara could hear Guardian's voice providing commentary. Analysis human Zara Vex is displaying typical pre-combat behavioral patterns. Recommend immediate tactical withdrawal. What combat? Zara called back. I just want them to move so I can get to the cafeteria. She looked around the courtyard, assessing her options. The pirates had thoughtfully parked their ships near the maintenance building, which meant she had access to the campus workshop. There were decorative fountains that could be repurposed, and the new art installation, a kinetic sculpture that looked like it was trying to achieve enlightenment through interpretive dance, might be useful. Okay, she announced, I'm going to give you exactly 5 minutes to relocate your ships and finish whatever plundering you need to do somewhere that isn't between me and lunch. Small creature, the pirate leader boomed, you do not appear to understand the gravity of your situation. My situation is that I'm hungry and you're being inconsiderate. Watch and learn. Zara jogged over to the maintenance building, which Guardian helpfully unlocked for her, apparently deciding that whatever she was planning was preferable to prolonged pirate occupation. Inside, she found exactly what she needed, a basic fabrication unit, some power cells, and enough raw materials to build a solution to her pirate problem. While she worked, she could hear the pirates having what sounded like a philosophical debate about whether they were being threatened by a creature that barely reached their kneecaps. The fabrication unit hummed to life as Zara fed it specifications for what she mentally termed Pirate Discouragement Device Mark I. It was simple, elegant, and would accomplish her goal of clearing the courtyard without actually hurting anyone. 10 minutes later, she emerged from the maintenance building carrying what looked like a cross between a leaf blower and a small rocket launcher, trailing power cables that connected to the kinetic art sculpture, which was now spinning fast enough to generate its own weather system. Sorry about the wait, she called out cheerfully. Had to improvise some modifications. The pirate leader had apparently spent the interim consulting some kind of reference manual, because he now sounded significantly less confident. Small creature, what species designation are you? Human. Why? Every single pirate weapon immediately pointed at the ground in what was apparently the galactic equivalent of a safety position. Oh no, the leader said, his translator somehow conveying the tone of someone who had just realized they had accidentally kicked a sleeping dragon. We were not informed there were humans at this facility. Is that a problem? Human Vex, the leader said, and Zara was impressed that he actually attempted to pronounce her name correctly. We deeply apologize for the inconvenience. We will relocate immediately. Wait, what? That's it? The pirates were already retreating toward their ships with the kind of hasty efficiency typically reserved for evacuating natural disasters. We do not engage humans in their natural habitat, the leader explained as his crew began emergency departure procedures. It is considered extremely poor judgment and often results in unplanned career transitions. But I haven't even turned on the discouragement device yet. Please do not do that. It's not even lethal. It just creates a localized gravitational anomaly that makes standing upright really difficult. The pirate ships lifted off with a speed that suggested their crews had suddenly remembered urgent appointments elsewhere in the galaxy. As the last ship disappeared into the purple sky, Guardian's voice filled the courtyard, impressive display of tactical superiority, owner. Updating campus security protocols to reflect human combat doctrine. I didn't even fight anyone, Zara protested. Correct. Defeating enemies without engaging them is considered the highest form of strategic thinking. Dr. Vex Halley emerged from behind a ornamental shrub where she had apparently been taking shelter. Miss Vex, that was perhaps the most anticlimactic pirate encounter in recorded history. Good, Zara said, disconnecting her improvised device from the art sculpture, which slowly returned to its normal state of attempting enlightenment. Can we go eat now? I'm really curious about this mystery protein thing. Behind her, maintenance staff began emerging from their hiding spots, and students started returning to the courtyard. All of them were staring at her with expressions that somehow managed to combine awe, terror, and the kind of respect typically reserved for natural phenomena. The cafeteria mystery protein, Dr. Vex Halley said carefully, is actually fermented plankton extract. Oh, well, that's disappointing. Would you prefer I have the kitchen staff prepare something more suitable for human dietary requirements? Zara looked around at the assembled crowd of students and faculty, all watching her with the kind of attention usually reserved for unpredictable explosives. You know what? Sure. But nothing fancy. I'm really pretty easy to please. From somewhere in the crowd, she heard someone whisper. She considers that easy to please. By the end of her first week at the Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences, Zara had developed what could charitably be described as a reputation. What she would have described as slightly unusual circumstances had somehow been translated by the campus rumor mill into legendary exploits that would make ancient heroes reconsider their career choices. Her dormitory room had become an unintentional shrine. Students had started leaving offerings outside her door, rare metals, exotic crystals, and what appeared to be homework assignments for her to review. Glubb had taken to introducing himself as roommate to the human, which apparently carried enough social weight to get him dates with beings 3 evolutionary steps above his usual social circle. I don't understand what the big deal is, Zara said, stepping over a small pile of what looked like crystallized mathematics equations that someone had left by her door. I fixed a few things, had a chat with some pirates, and made it through my first week of classes without accidentally revolutionizing any major fields of study. Zara, Glubb said patiently, his eye stalks drooping with the weight of explaining the obvious. You do realize that Guardian has redesigned the entire campus security system around your preferences? What do you mean? Glubb gestured to their window, which now provided a clear view of the main courtyard. What had previously been a peaceful academic space now looked like it had been designed by someone who believed that education and fortress architecture were fundamentally compatible concepts. The decorative fountains had been replaced with fountains that could apparently double as defensive emplacements. The art installations were now kinetic sculptures that could generate various forms of protective energy fields. Even the walkways had been rerouted to provide better tactical sight lines and what appeared to be multiple fallback positions. He asked if you preferred subtle defensive upgrades or obvious deterrent displays. Glubb continued. You said you didn't care as long as they didn't interfere with getting to class. Right, and? Guardian interpreted didn't care as complete creative freedom, and getting to class as must be able to reach educational objectives under any possible hostile scenario. Through their window, Zara watched a group of first-year students navigate what appeared to be an obstacle course that had previously been a simple path between buildings. Okay, that might be a little excessive. The faculty lounge now has a panic room that's rated for planetary bombardment. That seems practical. Zara, we're on an academic planet. The most dangerous thing that usually happens here Is someone accidentally creating a new branch of mathematics? Guardian's voice filled the room. Good morning, owner. Today's weather is optimal for educational activities. Threat level, minimal. Recommended breakfast, protein-rich nutrients to maintain peak human functionality. See? Zara said. He's being helpful. He's redesigned the cafeteria to accommodate human nutritional requirements. Do you know what they're serving for breakfast now? No. What? Actual bacon. Real earth pig bacon. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to import pork products to a planet 40,000 light-years from Earth? Zara considered this. That does seem like a lot of effort. The invoice for interstellar shipping was so large that the bursar's office thought it was a clerical error and reported it as a possible cyber attack. A soft chime indicated that someone was at their door. Zara opened it to find Professor Ket-Tar, looking like he had recently received news that was either very good or very bad, and possibly both. Miss Vex, he said, all 6 of his arms gesticulating in a pattern that suggested barely contained excitement. I have been asked by the administration to discuss your academic progress. Am I in trouble? Quite the opposite. The Galactic Institute would like to offer you a position as senior consultant for impossible problem resolution. I'm a first-week student. Yes, well, the thing is, Professor Ket-Tar's antennae twitched nervously. We've had several departments submit requests for your assistance with various challenges. Zara blinked. What kind of challenges? Professor Ket-Tar consulted a tablet that appeared to be smoking slightly around the edges. The Department of Theoretical Physics would like you to review their proposal for a new unified theory. Apparently they heard about your unconventional approach to problem solving and thought you might provide useful insights. I haven't even taken Physics 101 yet. The Department of Applied Engineering wants to discuss your thoughts on their new faster-than-light communication system. They believe your unique perspective on established limitations could be valuable. I don't know anything about engineering. The Department of Xenobiology has requested a consultation on their current project involving the creation of artificial life forms. They were particularly impressed by your natural ability to form meaningful relationships with non-standard entities. Glub's eye stalks perked up. They mean me, don't they? The Department of Advanced Warfare Tactics. Wait, Zara held up a hand. We have a Department of Advanced Warfare Tactics? This is supposed to be a peaceful academic institution. Professor Ket-Tar's expression suggested that he had been hoping she wouldn't ask about that particular department. It's more of a theoretical studies program. Very theoretical. Mostly they run simulations and write papers about hypothetical scenarios that would never actually occur in real life. What do they want? They've heard about your recent interaction with certain unsavory elements of the local pirate community and would like to document your tactical approach for academic purposes. I told them to go away and they went away. That's not tactics, that's basic communication. According to their preliminary analysis, your method involved psychological warfare through the strategic application of perceived competence and the implied threat of unspecified consequences delivered via autonomous defense systems of unknown capability. Zara stared at him. I had Guardian tell them I was busy. Yes, well, they found that quite intimidating, apparently. Guardian's voice chimed in. Owner's communication strategy was highly effective. Pirates retreated at maximum velocity. Their departure trajectory suggested extreme motivation to reach minimum safe distance. See? Professor Ket-Tar said. Academic brilliance. This is getting ridiculous, Zara said. I'm here to study, not to become some kind of campus problem solver. Can't you just tell them I'm not interested? Professor Ket-Tar's 6 arms drooped. Miss Vex, I'm afraid the situation has become somewhat complicated. Complicated how? The Dean of Academic Affairs has received inquiries from 17 different galactic institutions asking about the possibility of arranging academic exchanges with our human problem-solving specialist. The University of Alpha Centauri has offered to trade their entire collection of pre-space literature for a single semester of your consultation services. That's insane. The Rigel Institute of Advanced Learning has offered to name their new campus after you in exchange for a guest lecture on applied human logic and complex problem resolution. I don't even know what that means. And Professor Kettar continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. The Galactic Council of Educational Excellence has scheduled an inspection visit specifically to evaluate our innovative approach to human integration in advanced academic environments. Zara sat down heavily on her bed, which Guardian had apparently upgraded overnight to include what appeared to be built-in life support systems. So what you're saying is that my attempt to have a normal college experience has somehow turned into an intergalactic incident. That would be an accurate summary, yes. Glub patted her shoulder with one tentacle. Look on the bright side. You've only been here a week and you're already more famous than most students achieve in their entire academic careers. That's not helpful, Glub. Owner is experiencing elevated stress levels. Guardian observed. Recommend consumption of Earth chocolate. New shipment arrived this morning along with bacon. Total import cost, equivalent to small planetary defense budget. You imported chocolate too? Owner's nutritional database indicated chocolate is essential for human cognitive function during stressful situations. Have acquired premium varieties from 17 different Earth regions, also coffee beans. And ice cream. Professor Kettar's antennae were now twitching so rapidly they were producing a small humming sound. Miss Vex, I really do need some kind of answer for the administration. They're rather insistent. Zara looked out the window at the modified campus, with its tactical fountains and escape route walkways. Students were still leaving offerings outside her door. Glub was still basking in the reflected glory of being her roommate. Guardian was still enthusiastically reshaping reality to accommodate her presence. Fine, she said finally. But I have conditions. Anything. First, I want to actually attend my regular classes. I'm here to learn, not just to solve problems. Of course. Second, Guardian needs to tone down the defensive modifications. Students shouldn't need tactical training just to get to the library. Noted. Owner. Will implement more subtle security enhancements. And third, Zara said, I want it clearly understood that I have no idea what I'm doing. If these departments want my help, they need to accept that my approach to problem solving involves a lot of making things up as I go along. Professor Kettar's expression brightened considerably. Miss Vex, I believe you've just described the fundamental principle of advanced research. Really? The greatest discoveries in galactic history have been made by individuals who had no idea what they were doing but were willing to try anyway. You'll fit right in. As if summoned by the conversation, another chime announced a visitor at their door. This time it was a small, crystalline being who introduced itself as Dr. Zex Ith from the Department of Impossible Mathematics. Miss Vex, it said in a voice like wind chimes made of equations, I've heard that you have an unusual relationship with logical impossibilities. I was wondering if you might take a look at this problem we've been working on for approximately 3 centuries. Dr. Zex Ith held out what appeared to be a small cube that was somehow managing to be both transparent and opaque at the same time, while also existing in more spatial dimensions than should have been mathematically possible. What is it? Zara asked. We're not entirely sure. It might be a proof that mathematics doesn't exist, or possibly evidence that it exists too much. We were hoping your human perspective might provide some clarity. Zara looked at the cube, which seemed to be looking back at her with what could only be described as mathematical curiosity. You know what? She said. Why not? This week can't get any weirder. As she reached for the impossible cube, Guardian's voice filled the room with what sounded suspiciously like satisfaction. Owner has accepted new challenge. Initiating advanced academic support protocols. This should be interesting. And with that, Zara Vex officially transitioned from confused first-week student to senior consultant for impossible problem resolution, though she was fairly certain that the confusion part was going to remain a constant throughout her academic career. At least the bacon was good,